Okay, day number 9. Today, the most underrated professional wrestlers, in my personal opinion. I know my 1, I know my 2, I know my 3 and my 4. My number 5, I just figured out. Okay, you guys ready? Because here we go. Number 5. Number 5 is a guy I've been watching since he was in WCW in the late 80s, 89 maybe, as early as 91, 92. This man is the son of a plumber. He's the grandson of a plumber. He is Dustin Rhodes, the natural Dustin Rhodes. He is very, very, very underrated in terms of his in-ring ability, able to kind of tell a story. I mean, dude's been doing this. I mean, we're talking, this is 2019. He just had his match recently with Cody at the AEW show, Double or Nothing. I don't know if they had a match at Fight for the Fallen, but I don't think that he did. But maybe he did actually against the Young Bucks. Hell, I can't remember. Oh, I'm getting old. Anyway, I didn't even watch Fight for the Fallen because I didn't really care. And if I didn't care, then I think a lot of people probably didn't care. But anyway, so Dustin Rhodes been doing it for a long, long time. Dude is just top notch. He's also been known as Gold Dust or just Dustin or whatever. He was also known as Seven for a little bit. But anyway, his in-ring ability, I mean, they call him the natural for a reason. And I think that just talked about his ability to be able to wrestle in the ring. He may have not been an actual mat wrestler like dudes like Brock Lesnar. I think Chris Benoit was. I know Shelton Benjamin, Charlie Haas, and Kurt Angle were guys like that who were actual mat wrestlers. But I don't know if Dustin Rhodes actually was. If he was, that says a lot because it speaks of his ability as a professional wrestler, and he did a good job. He was just one of the things I always remember about him was his bulldog off of the whether it's off of the ropes or off of the middle rope or something like that. Just the form. I think the form was part of it. I kind of want to include Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, but I feel like he's actually rated very high because he's actually not underrated. Actually, never mind. I don't want to mention Steamboat. I love Steamboat, but I think he's rated right where he belongs in like probably the top 5 of all time. You know, you can interchange it with other wrestlers, but I'm not going to include Steamboat. Never mind. Anyway, so Dustin Rhodes / Gold Dust / Seven, whatever you want to call him. He is my number 5 underrated wrestler of all time. I don't think he gets enough props for his ability to wrestle in the ring. I'm not going to sit here and talk about his top 50 moves or anything like that. I kind of did that the other day with the high flyers. But when it comes to like a match, I know I'm going to enjoy it as far as like it'll be watchable. You know, you've seen matches, I'm sure, where there's a lot of botches. You know, there was one with Charlotte and Lacey Evans recently, I think on Raw a few weeks back. And there were some botches there. There have been some botches with Sasha Banks and Asuka. There's been botches, you know, and I don't mean like injury botches. People were talking about that recently on some post somewhere about, worst botch in professional wrestling. And I don't want to say like an injury botch is a botch. I think it's just a little bit different. I think a missed move. So for instance, Shane McMahon at Extreme Rules, being thrown into the Undertaker, and Undertaker being, missing the tombstone, either because Shane fell or I don't know what happened. I forget what it was, but I was just like, that was bad. That was really bad. And then he had to try it again. I think he had to give him another move, and then he went and did it, and then it worked. But to me, I was like, that looked really bad. And then 2 nights later, Shane with Kevin Owens was about to take a stunner, and then it was mistimed. And I'm mentioning this for the second time this week, and Kevin Owens had to do a stunner again. And I'm just like, Shane involved in 2 moves that were completely botched within 2 days of each other with 2 different wrestlers. I'm kind of gonna go with the other wrestlers as it not being their fault. They wrestled, to me, far more than Shane wrestled. Shane, he has wrestled obviously matches against Kurt Angle, Steve Blackman, obviously against The Undertaker WrestleMania 32. He's had a lot of matches, so I'm not going to say he never wrestled or anything like that. As far as getting in the ring, like he'll get dirty, he'll what do they say? He'll get his hands dirty, but some botches there. You just don't see those kind of things with Dustin Rhodes. You just don't. I don't think I've ever seen a Dustin Rhodes / Goldust botched move that was his fault that I could ever remember. I've seen a bunch of other stuff, but I don't think I've ever seen one with Dustin Rhodes. The dude is he's just solid. He's just solid, whether he's teaming with Steamboat back in the day or wrestling with his father against whoever the hell he was wrestling against, or whether he's teaming with Cody against, was it the Usos, the Shield, or somebody? It was the Shield. It was Reigns and Rollins, and it was, Goldust and Stardust. I don't think I've ever seen a botch from this guy. And that's saying a lot, considering this dude's been wrestling since, like I said, late 80s or early 90s. And he's had a lot of matches in various companies. And, he's in his 40s now, I'm sure, well into his 40s. He's older than I am, because he was definitely wrestling before I was ever, I was well into puberty, that's for damn sure. But yeah, so I know, even though he's older than dirt now, than most wrestlers, he's still putting on a damn good show. I think Meltzer actually rated that match with him and Cody a 5. And that tells you a lot, that a guy that's close to 50, probably 50 years old, is involved in a 5-star match just between two people, not like like the 6-man at NXT for that North American Championship. Like, this is two people, obviously brothers, so I'm sure they had stuff that they probably planned on doing a long time ago. They finally got a chance to do it, and I think that's great. And not to take anything away from Cody, but I got to give it to Dustin there and say that he is number 5 on the most underrated wrestler list. Number 4 is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. And I mean all time, no matter what country, no matter what continent, no matter what company, continent, and country. This guy is one of the best wrestlers I've ever seen. Once again, where I just mentioned with Dustin, you didn't see any botches with Dustin. I don't remember seeing any botches with this guy either, because he was just an absolute professional in the ring, whether he was the Super Ninja, Super Black Ninja, or he was the Pearl of the Orient, or he was a member of the NWO, or he wrestled in Japan. The Great Muta is one of the great ones, as far as I'm concerned, and I don't think anyone can really argue with that. This guy, aerial moves, back handsprings and elbows in the corner, moonsaults landing on his feet. I see a lot of those today where people actually try to land on their feet and end up missing and landing on their butt. That's kind of a botch. Not really a big botch, but kind of botchy. I don't remember seeing any of those from Muta. It may have happened, but I don't remember seeing any of those. The way that his speed with that elbow off of the ropes, the way that he would just hit that elbow when you're on the mat was just incredible. It was incredible. The only type of speed I've ever seen like that before with a move would be with Dynamite Kid snap suplexing anybody. I remember my brother used to always say that was like the fastest suplex he'd ever seen, because it was pretty damn fast. And the same thing with Muta. Just really, really impressive with his work in the ring. So yeah, that back handspring elbow, the moonsault, the Shining Wizard when he became a little bit slower, a little bit bigger, a little bit older, kind of had to change his moveset a bit. But dude was still performing, doing the STFs and the inverted STFs. Dude's just amazing at what he does. And I don't think enough people have seen him enough or been exposed to him enough. Maybe because of the language barrier. If he spoke English, I think he would have been maybe exposed a little bit more. I know he's the one who, quote unquote, beat Sting for the TV championship back in 90, Great American Bash, 89 actually. It was 89. That was the quote unquote botched finish, storyline botched finish, where Sting was pinning Muta and they both had their shoulders down, but Sting had his shoulder down at 3 and Muta had his shoulder up. But if you really look back, like, both of their shoulders were up and moving the entire time, so it shouldn't have even counted as a 3 count. So, kind of like the Becky Lynch Ronda Rousey finish at WrestleMania 35, I think it was. Yeah, 35. But once again, Muta never or rarely ever saw any botches. He had moves that I'd never seen before, and with the speed in which he did that thing, he took the idea of the green mist, and even though it has nothing to do with wrestling per se, like wrestling moves, but just I really liked that he did that too. Referees would kind of look confused, like, "Oh, how'd they get green mist all over their face?" When the referee wasn't looking, just like, "Oh, well, I don't know, but I'm gonna pin him," whatever. Really cool stuff. I really enjoyed Muta's stuff, and you just don't see too much speed like that and precision like that today, with submission moves and stuff like that, leg locks and all types of stuff. Like, if I were to see Dustin Rhodes versus Muta, I think that would be an amazing match. Matter of fact, I'm probably going to go online and look for that later, because I love to download old wrestling matches, especially, ones you're just not going to see ever again. I might not ever see an AJ Styles versus, Ric Flair in their primes, because that's just far, far different in terms of time. But if there's a AJ Styles versus Ric Flair in TNA, like, I'm going to find it and save it, just because of what it's probably just worth to see it, or just to have it, because at some point you won't be able to have it anymore. But anyway, so yeah, that's my number 4. Dustin Rhodes, number 5. Great Muta, number 4. My number 3 is a man who was part of the world's greatest tag team and took one of the greatest showstopper savate kicks to the face from the top rope, and that is Mr. Shelton Benjamin, the gold standard. This guy was an actual amateur wrestler, I believe, in college with Brock Lesnar. I think they both went to the University of Minnesota, and they were known as, afterward, I think it was when we started doing professional wrestling in FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling, that they were known as the Minnesota Stretching Crew, which is kind of a play on the name of the Minnesota Wrecking Crew, which was Gene and Ole Anderson back in like the 70s and 80s. So the Minnesota Stretching Crew, which was, Shelton and Brock, because they were legit wrestlers, and they could probably both break your ankle. But Shelton doesn't get really mentioned a whole lot as far as guys who can actually wrestle or that could put on a good show in the ring and just do their thing, Once again, the thing with the botches, I don't remember seeing any botches. I've seen botches from guys like Roman and Luger and I think Brock, even though Brock's a legit wrestler too. Seen botches, maybe his fault, maybe not his fault, whatever, but still just, I don't think I've seen anything from Shelton Benjamin. One of the greatest things that he ever did was take that, oh my God, I can't even remember the name of the damn Shawn Michaels move now. Okay, I had to look it up. Sweet Chin Music. It was on a Monday Night Raw show way back when, in like 2000, probably 5 or 6. And Shelton was coming off of the top rope from the springboard, and he went to jump on Shawn, and Shawn hit him with Sweet Chin Music, and it was one of the greatest, if not the greatest, Sweet Chin Musics ever hit, ever in our entire lives. Came out of nowhere and never seen it before. That's one of those things I really respect about professional wrestling matches, is if I've seen something I've never seen before, I always know I'm going to get, headlocks and, people getting pummeled and stuff like that. But when I see moves that get countered into other moves, it's just, it just looks amazing to me. And I really appreciate it. And I love it. But anyway, Shelton's in-ring ability, pretty solid. That I think it's a T-bone suplex or something like that, kind of the move I think that Taz had maybe made famous, I think. But Shelton, once again, one of those guys that just not really botching stuff, legit pro wrestler, was able to do things in the ring that, that just, it took a good ability to be able to do that. And nothing too special, but just underrated, overlooked, someone who's going to put on a good match. May not have a great personality in the ring, but can be a part of that storytelling. So giving my number 3 spot to Shelton Benjamin. And my number 2 spot, William Regal. That is my number 2. He was initially going to be my number 3 behind Muta, but I was trying to figure everything out. But William Regal is my number 2. This is the guy who embarrassed Bill Goldberg in a match and turned it kind of into a shoot wrestling match. A shoot means it was for real. So turned it into a shoot wrestling match and showed that Goldberg had a lot of weaknesses. Like, he just was not a very good wrestler. He made it look like he could be a good wrestler, but when he got in there with someone who actually could wrestle, it looked like shit. Matter of fact, I know you're going to hear Goldberg's name in some of these other videos because he is such an iconic character. That he's, of course, going to get mentioned across the board a lot of times. Anyway, but back to William Regal, a.k.a. Lord Steven Regal. Great character, by the way, just kind of a snobby little shit. Now is the NXT general manager, so he's doing a great job over there. But in the ring, once again, even though the botches in the match with Goldberg, it was full of botches, but I don't think they were botches because of Regal. Because you don't see Regal in a bunch of matches having a bunch of botches. You don't. Because they don't really exist. Like I said before, I haven't seen it with Rhodes, with Muta, or with Benjamin, and the same thing here with Regal. And when I give you my number 1, you're going to be like, yeah, that's pretty much everyone's number 1 most underrated wrestler. But yeah, when it comes to underrated wrestlers, I give Regal my number 2. I don't think that people really think of him as far as being able to put on a good match. I mean, he had a series of 7 matches with Ric Flair, I believe. Not too many guys, I think, would have been able to get booked for that unless they actually could put on a good match. You know what I mean? Like, that's pretty serious as far as I see, you know. To get booked in a best of 7 with Ric Flair, pretty serious stuff. So that means they weren't taking him lightly. That means that he was pretty good at what he did. He may have not put a bunch of asses in seats, and that's the thing with a lot of these, you know, these 4 that I've mentioned so far with Muta, Benjamin, Dustin, and now Regal, and even my number 1 overall. You'll be like, yeah, they're not putting asses in seats because they're so good in the ring. They didn't really need too much of a character. I mean, Goldust was a character, sure. I'm not going to overlook that. The natural Dustin Rhodes, he was Dusty Rhodes' son and just was good at what he did. Muta, he had a character, but it wasn't one that was well known throughout the wrestling world. You know, if you know, people are obviously going to know who Hulk Hogan is and Andre and Savage and yada, 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 right? They're going to know all those big names, but those guys weren't great at actual wrestling when it came to moves and this thing and that thing and various holds, right? Chris Jericho was like the man of like 1,004 holds or something like that. And so, so funny. But like the greater wrestlers that were actually really good at professional wrestling and holds and this thing and that thing aren't the ones you're going to remember more so than the guys who had greater characters. Like, I should probably do a list of the top 5 or maybe the top 10 greatest characters. And of course, Hulk Hogan would be number 1 because duh. And Undertaker would probably be number 2 because duh. But anyway, as far as wrestling holds and stuff like that, Regal knew him. Regal knew him, and he knew how to manipulate things and slowly transition from one move to another. He kind of, well, I shouldn't say he reminds me of someone. I'll say Zack Sabre Jr. reminds me of William Regal in terms of the ability to move one wrestling hold into another one. Maybe Zack Sabre Jr. does it a little bit more and maybe faster. Sabre Jr. was also younger from what I remember, and he was also smaller, skinnier than Regal. So maybe that adds to the speed, or maybe just the desire to make it faster. Who knows? But either way, I look at Sabre Jr., I look at Daniel Bryan, and I look back to William Regal as how many other guys were able to do this on a regular basis, to kind of just to be able to have these moves and these holds one right after the other, like and not have botches. Like even Daniel Bryan, I don't think has any botches. He could have been on here, but he's just too big of a wrestler. But yeah, I think William Regal, aka Lord Steven Regal, aka the general manager of NXT, is definitely a strong number 2 in my opinion for most underrated wrestler of all time. And my number 1 most underrated wrestler of all time is a guy who is known as the Man of 1,000 Holds. He was a former Four Horseman. He was doing WWE producing or backstage whatevering, and is now with AEW because he was let go recently. I don't know if that's a good or bad move, but it's a move that happened. Now he's with AEW. And this man is Dean Malenko. When I talk about professional wrestling or wrestling holds or whatever, this is always a guy I think of in my mind when I think of stuff like that. When I was talking to this one kid a few years ago, he was in high school and he was trying out for the wrestling team, stuff like that, and he was like asking me about, because he knew how much I watched wrestling, but I mean, the two are so different. Amateur wrestling versus professional wrestling, they're so different with a lot of, well, I'm sure they have some similarities, obviously, because one doesn't come to existence without the other. And I'm sure there are holds you could do in amateur wrestling that also work in professional wrestling, But anyway, he was asking me about wrestling holds and stuff like that. And like, what do I know? And I'm like, hey, I don't know really anything off the top of my head, but you might want to look at this video of this professional wrestler and see what you can learn that might actually work. And I sent him a video of Dean Malenko. Now, maybe you're laughing at me and like, that's stupid. But I mean, I don't know. I never amateur wrestled. But if I could look at a wrestler and say, this is the guy you need to look at, that's the guy I'm going to send you to go look at. Him or Benoit. And I know I easily could have mentioned Benoit, but because of the I actually need to do a Hall of Fame video too. But anyway, because of the tragedy that surrounded his family and him and everything, it just, I don't think people really underrate him. I think they rate him very high as far as in-ring ability. They just don't really talk about him because of everything. So, but yeah, Benoit was amazing. He actually had some good matches with Dean too. Another set of matches that just, no botches. No botches, because the guys were just so damn good at what they did. And they just didn't really make a lot of mistakes. Maybe they did, but they were just easily covered up because they were so damn good. So, you didn't get a whole lot of botchy matches with guys like Dean and Chris and William Regal, Muta, Benjamin, and Dustin Rhodes. But Dean is, he's the guy that just, a man of 1,000 holds. I don't even think that's a joke, to be honest with you. He may not know him off the top of his head, but I know that whole thing with him and Chris Jericho in WCW was kind of funny. But still, like, one of the greatest matches people talk about as far as cruiserweights, because he was a smaller dude, was the match with him and Ultimo Dragon. I think it was like at a Starrcade, or I can't remember what event it was. Maybe like a World War III or Beach Blast, whatever the fuck, I don't know. But yeah, that was a solid match. Solid match, because the two, Ultimo Dragon and Dean Malenko, are two great wrestlers. How do you not put on a great match? That's like the Pillman Juice and Thunder Liger match. Like, yeah, it was great. What'd you expect? Or Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio was great. What'd you expect? It's what they did. Neville versus Austin Aries at WrestleMania 32. That was great. I loved it. I thought Aries should have gone over, but it is what it is. Cruiserweight stuff. You put two good or great cruiserweights in a match, you're gonna get some top-notch work. Especially if they are two guys that are really, really good on their own. But back to Malenko, he's a guy that often gets overlooked, and I don't think he should be. Matter of fact, he was so good at what he did that every time I get a WWE game, I download him almost immediately. I'm obviously going to download the Hulk Hogan because he's not in the game anymore. Hopefully they bring him back soon, because I think no matter what he did and said on that video, yeah, you take him off for a little bit, I understand that, but at some point you got to bring him back, because you're already putting his ass back on TV, so you may as well put him in the game too, because he's taking up a spot in my created folder. But anyway, Dean Malenko is always one of those guys I download first. Since I first got 2K14. Yeah, my buddy bought me 2K14. I had Malenko on that one, 2K16, 17, 18, 19. And when I get 2K20, he'll be on that main roster that I download. It'll be one of the first ones I download because Dean Malenko was just that good. He was that good, put on great matches. I would have loved to see Dean Malenko against somebody like, who'd I love to see him against? I don't know. Maybe somebody like Shinsuke Nakamura. That'd have been a good one. Dean maybe versus Muta. We did see Dean and Joe Malenko against the British Bulldogs. I think it was AWA or All Japan or something like that. Early 80s. Pretty cool stuff to see a match like that. And it was actually pretty good. It was about 20, 30 minutes long. Pretty good stuff. No complaints there. Once again, no botches. It's like every match I've seen of Dean Malenko, I cannot remember a single botch at all. Not a single one. Because dude just put on good matches. That's just what he did. So if you ever get a chance to see like a Dean Malenko versus William Regal match, or a Dean Malenko versus Benoit, Eddie, Mysterio, Psychosis, Kidman, there's probably a bunch from on the network. And those Nitros and those Thunders and those pay-per-views that they had, Clash of the Champions, all that stuff. Just check them out, man. Check them out. Dustin Rhodes, aka Gold Dust, Great Muta, Shelton Benjamin, William Regal, Dean Malenko. That's my opinion of the top 5 wrestlers who are underrated. Now, there's a list I got from a website. I don't think it was Ranker. It was, here we go. This is the list. Oh, don't tell me this is the overrated list. Oh, I wish this thing would load. This is the overrated list. Oops. Got to go to the underrated. Here we go. Oh, they had Gold Dust on here at number 6. That's interesting. But some other underrated wrestlers that they had Malenko at 1. This is from the website, thetop10s.com. And it had Malenko at number 1 for underrated wrestlers. John Morrison, a.k.a. Nitro, I think that was him. Yeah, he was Nitro. He was number 2. Shelton was number 3. Kane, number 4. William Regal, number 5. Gold Dust, 6. Swagger, 7. Christian, 8. Fandango, 9. Lance Storm, 10. Some other notable ones, Owen Hart at 14. Ziggler at 15. Got to give him credit for that. Ziggler is definitely, as much as he's so much like Shawn Michael, I got to give him credit for being good in the ring. Taka Michinoku, number 16. Some other people here, Booker T at 20, Arn at 21, Mr. Perfect at 24, Rude at 25, Kidman, another cruiserweight right there, 26, Punk 27, the British Bulldog, number 30. Got to give him some credit there. And I think I'll give like one more. Tajiri, 37. So, yeah, a lot of underrated wrestlers there that definitely deserve our respect. And I will put this link down below in this video. So if you have a complaint, if you have an agreement, if you have something you want to say, put it down below in the comments. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, KJ from OC. And I will see you tomorrow with my top 5 overrated wrestlers. And I promise you that list is going to blow your mind. Peace out.